Hi, I'm Mike Brewer, and this is Mike's midweek message. Thanks for dropping in. It's good to see you. I have always been a fellow who loves wandering around in the woods and in creek beds. And years ago, as a youngster, I came across a rock that caught my interest. At the time, I didn't know what it was, but I picked it up, and I have had it ever since. It's a piece of obsidian. You can tell by the luster and by some of the fracture marks that obsidian is a kind of natural glass. It comes from volcanoes when lava comes out and cools quickly and turns into glass. Obsidian has been treasured by many different cultures and tribes for literally tens of thousands of years. The First Nations in this country discovered that obsidian was a wonderful stone to use for making arrowheads and knives and scrapers. It became a staple of technology for those early folks. Other people discovered the reflective properties of obsidian and found ways to slice it and polish it and turn it into mirrors that allowed folks to see their reflection in a true and faithful way. Obsidian has been used in jewelry and still is, and I'm told, not that I'm an expert in this, but I'm told that some surgical blades make use of shards of obsidian because the natural glass will take a sharper, keener edge than you can achieve even with high quality surgical steel. Yeah, it's a fascinating mineral that's been used in so many ways to make a difference in human culture and human society. And of course, there's only one way to get obsidian: through fire, through pressure. When ordinary stones of a certain kind are subjected to pressure and heat and fire, so much so that they become molten, and when that moltenness cools, those minerals have been transformed into something new and I think beautiful and very useful. I mention obsidian because it seems to me that our nation, our culture in many ways, has been passing through the fire this year and maybe longer than this year. When we look back at the recent past, what do we see? Well, we see the COVID pandemic, of course, which has had such an impact on our healthcare system, on our families and friendships, on our households. It has caused economic damage. It has caused isolation and loneliness. It has caused depression and separation among many people. If you are among the few whose circle has not included someone who suffered or died from this pernicious and communicative disease, then you should count yourself fortunate. So there's been COVID. On the social front, there's been the boiling over of the Black Lives Matter movement, complicated by the apparent injustices in our society that still treat blacks as if they are less worthy of equality and less worthy of justice than white people. And those demonstrations have confronted us with hard truths that we need to wrestle with as a country. And of course, unfortunately, have also provided opportunities for self-serving folks to turn in riots into looting and vandalism, which serves no one and accomplishes nothing except to aggravate conditions. And then there have been the divisive politics in our country, the highly partisan division between Democrats and Republicans, culminating in an outbreak of violence in our Capitol building, in scenes on the news that I never believed I would see in this country, in people who were determined to mount an insurrection and to create an obstacle, undoing one of the most fundamental principles of American democracy, and that is the peaceful transition of power from one elected official to the next elected official. It is one of the things that has made us, I believe, an ideal and a beacon in the world. And to see that attacked has been unsettling and heartbreaking. So, yeah, it seems to me that in lots of ways our nation has been passing through the fire. And we remain in many ways thrust into that fire as we face real challenges at getting our country back on its feet again in so many different ways. But having said that, I also want to say that my hope is that that fire will temper us. That fire will strengthen and purify us. That fire will make something even better of us than we have been before. There's a well-known and wonderful passage in the 5th chapter of Paul's letter to the Romans when Paul, and it's part of a longer argument that's worth looking at, but I'm going to pull out a piece of it. Paul says that Christians actually seek to rejoice in our sufferings because we know that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope, and hope, says Paul, will not disappoint us. To compare suffering with fire is an easy comparison. No one wants to get burned. No one wants to undergo suffering. It's the gift that no one asks for. And yet often it is the only way that a person or a culture or a country can really rise above themselves and become stronger and better than they were before. Maybe I'm too optimistic. Maybe I'm too hopeful, but I will take the risk. Because my prayer is that when things have finally cooled down and we have a chance to appraise where we have been, what we have come through, and what we have become as a result of that, that we will be like a piece of obsidian, something beautiful and useful and strong that could only have been created through fire and pressure and struggle. That's what I want to believe about our country. That's what I choose to believe. That's what I pray for. That's what I hope for. I'm not saying God sent the pandemic or caused the violence in the Capitol, but I am saying there's nothing that God cannot use to achieve his purposes, to further his will, and to reshape his world into the kind of world that God has always intended us to be. Well, thanks for dropping in. I hope to see you again soon. And in the meanwhile, be strong, be safe, and be faithful. Bye.